such a pleasure to work for President Hinckley. He was Brother Hinckley then. He wasn't President Hinckley. He was the secretary of the missionary committee, and he hadn't been made a what's just less than an apostle, an assistant. He hadn't been made an assistant yet. That happened right 2 months after I left. The way that I first heard about the job in Brother Hinckley's office was his daughter and I had been roommates at college, and she must have told him that I was looking for a job because he called me right in my Bern, Idaho living room one day, and he said, "This is Gordon Hinckley. Kathleen says that you might be looking for a job." And I said yes, and he said, "Well, come in and we'll talk about it." So I got in my car immediately that minute and threw some clothes in a suitcase and drove to Salt Lake. And I went in to see him, and he put me right to work. And about 2 weeks later, I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, you're still here, aren't you?" And that was it. Oh my goodness, he was a delight to work for. There was never anything. He never scolded, but if I made a mistake on a letter, he wouldn't scold, but he'd bring me a usage book, an English usage book, and let me look up what the thing was. Isn't that a nice thing that's a nice way for a boss to behave. It really is. It really, really is. The outer door to his office, our offices were separated by a door, and the door was open. And one day, he was setting apart missionaries, and he would be giving the blessing, and he'd be saying, "You be blessed with all the powers that you need," semicolon, new paragraph. He just put in all the punctuation right while he was giving the vocal blessing, and that was fun. I remember one day Brother Hinckley came back from some meeting with Henry D. Moyle was the counselor in the first presidency when I was there, and he'd come back from a meeting that they'd been to, and he was laughing so hard he had tears running down his cheeks. And the meeting they'd been to was, I don't know whether anybody knows these, but that Marky Peterson and Spencer W. Kimball were at the meeting. Those were two apostles, and one was playing the organ and one was leading the singing, and they weren't singing the same tune, and Brother Hinckley had tears running down his cheeks, that it was so funny because nobody could figure out what was going on. They were all tired of this meeting, and it was funny anyway. But that was really where I met Dad, because Dad was working on the Finnish temple ceremony, and he'd have to come into Brother Hinckley's office to get a permit to go into the top floor of the Salt Lake Temple. And so after he'd been in there one day, Brother Hinckley came out of his office and to me, and he said, "Now, Diane, there's a young man. You ought to stick your foot out and trip." And it was such fun 6 months later for me to show him that I had a diamond ring. And actually, this isn't Brother Hinckley, but President Joseph Fielding Smith came by, and he was looking at my ring, and instead of saying how beautiful it was and congratulations, he said, "I'm so upset with the young men of the church. All they want is some frizzle-headed floozy. I wish this would happen to every girl here in the church office." Anyway, that is one of my favorite stories.
How would he get water out of his ear?
stand, and I can see him doing it, and hop on one foot and shake his head. Have I told this, and that's why Kirsty knows? He would stand. I've seen him do it more than once, and he would just stand and hop on one foot and shake his head, and that was just a funny sight. That's in my mind indelibly. Say, he was a human being that had issues, just like any of us have.